Hey, everybody. Welcome to Sama, Seattle Sacred Music and Art. I'm Derek Mazzoni, and thanks for being here. We're still in the age of COVID. There are some amazing transformations going on all over the world. My heart goes out to all of the amazing people in the gorgeous city of Beirut that suffered a horrific explosion and calamity um, in its port. The footage was just insane, and I'm hoping, like as the glass half full guy I am, that this will lead to some changes within the governmental structure of the country, and hopefully, as in here in the United States, we can take adversity and mutate it alchemically into something much more powerful and good for all of us. So tonight on Sama, I have a very special guest. We're going to be digging deep into the role of records, actual vinyl and pre-vinyl 78s in it, these in the dissemination of sacred music and healing music. Now, when you say sacred music and healing music, your brain tends to go to one place, and that is India. Now, you know, for a long time, music has been, for thousands of years, music has been evolving in India. But many people in the West had no idea what was going on with that. Occasionally, in the late 1800s, when Britain would do pavilions and it would showcase Indian artists, you would see the tabla and sitar for the first time. Then in the 30s, there was some dissemination of Indian music, but it really kind of kicked in the 50s and 60s. Tonight's guest is sound artist and author Robert Millis. Hello, Robert.
Hi there, Derek.
How's it going?
It's going pretty well. How are you?
It's going well. You have a lot of records around you, my friend.
Yeah, I do. Um, when I moved into this house almost 20 years ago, this wall looked like hell. And so I started putting broken records and stuff on it, and it's just grown ever since then. Most of these are 78s,
That's beautiful.
shellac discs. Yeah.
So, Robert has a very interesting pedigree. He's a Fulbright scholar, Guggenheim fellow. He tends to travel the world, and he was able to actually publish this book. Let me get the focus right. Indian Talking Machine, which is a look at the history of gramophones and records in India, which is our subject for tonight in Sama. So, Robert, um, what's up? How'd you get into this? There's so many roads in life. How did you find this road?
Yeah, well, when you come to a fork in the road, you got to take it, to quote Yogi Berra. Um, I don't know. I'd always been interested in Indian music, and yet I didn't know very much about it. It kind of, at one hand, seemed so beautiful, but on the other hand, seemed kind of incomprehensible. Um, and yet, I was also very interested in 78 RPM records and very interested in the act of collecting. I was collecting records here in America. Uh, I was interested in the first recordings made by man, things like that. I guess that comes from being a sound artist and being interested in recording and music. It's fairly natural, at least to me, to think about the origins of that. And so I thought it might be interesting to go to India and try to look at some of the early recordings there, and meet some collectors from India. And I did that, and then I went back a second time with a Fulbright. I actually convinced Fulbright, and if I can convince Fulbright to send me to India to meet collectors and buy old records, then you can too. Everyone can do it. Um,
Ah,
but I came to find out that India was basically one of the first countries outside of the Western world to get recorded. To have recordings were made there in 1902. Um, the interest in records there deepened. The music spread very rapidly thanks to the gramophone. And India is what it is today, as a powerhouse music making machine. But the origins go back to 1902.
wow, that's really early in a context of the first recordings. Um, did it democratize music? Because from what I read in your book and in others, is that you had to, in order to have music in your life, you had to have some resources to make something like that happen, and then suddenly more people could hear this, could access this on these gramophones, which you have one right there, which are spring powered, so you didn't even need electricity to run them. And then all of these records. Your book is pretty phenomenal because they just produced so many freaking records. It was insane.
Well, they
Um,
did everywhere in the world, to be honest. But yeah.
and then here at Sama we're focusing on sacred and healing music and its power to help people get through times, to transcend and to transform. Oh, big shout out also to Seattle Theater Group and Sublime Frequencies who are partnering with us on this presentation of sound artist and author Robert Millis. Um, But at the same time, um, things changed when you start recording artists. And one of the things we were discussing before is the fact that when a singer sings a song, there's no real limitation to the length of that song. It's how many verses that singer comes up with. But when you're recording onto a record, the record has a limitation. What does that do to the song? I'm not saying it's bad or good. I'm not giving a value judgment because some songs are definitely too long, and some are too short. But what happens? Like what? How do you? What happened when you take a such an ancient culture as India and its music, and then put it in these margins of like we only have X amount of time on the 78.
Well, you've covered a lot of ground there already, and yeah, I want to go back slightly. You're exactly right about the democratization of sound, because certainly with Indian classical music, it was especially controlled, if you will, by the wealthy classes, things like that, who actually could afford to have musicians living in their house to have music whenever they wanted. Um, but with records, exactly, one person in the town could have a gramophone, a few records, and suddenly everyone could actually listen to these things that couldn't afford to go to a concert before or couldn't afford to hire a musician to come to their house. So that was amazing all over the world, but it was a huge thing in India. Um, and there's lots of stories I came across while I was researching my book about people whose recollections from the 20s and earlier were one person way down the road had the gramophone and all the kids would go over there and listen to the few records that they could. Um, but yeah, exactly. Indian music is generally a long form thing. To fully explore the raga in a classical manner could take easily 30 minutes or more, depending on the artist. Um, so there's records which only had 3 minutes. It was a big deal. Uh, Certain artists were capable of condensing the raga to work on a 3 minute record, or knew which parts to leave out. Other artists weren't very good at that. So what's interesting is the artists that were good at it, then their careers blossomed, and the artists that weren't, at least for a time, they were, left behind. Um, but I think it's interesting. I mean, that of course the 3 minute format, which is basically established by 78 RPM records, is what we still have today.
Hmm.
It speaks something to our attention form. I mean, what it took until the Beatles in the late 60s releasing Hey Jude, and even the Beatles were told, no one's going to buy this record. It can't be played on the radio. It's too long. Um, so we really are locked into this 2 3 minute format. Um, Maybe it's some kind of human thing. I don't know.
Okay, let's hear something. Let's like you got these records right there, my friend. Let's hear something and tell us what
Sure.
we're about to listen to.
What we're about to listen to is, I think I'm going to put on Purna Das Bal. He's one of the Bauls of Bengal. This is probably one of the first recordings of a Baul. He went on to become a very famous proponent, traveled all over the world of this type of music. And this is certainly, he was a teenager when this was recorded. And I'm trying to remember if he's still alive right now. He might not actually be.
Mm-mm, no.
No, he's
Who?
not. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit. Like, who were the balls?
The Bauls they're basically sort of wandering mystics from the Bengal region of India, which is uh, right next to what's now Bangladesh. And they exist both in Bangladesh and in India. They have a sort of syncretic type of religion. They borrow a lot from Hinduism. They take a lot from Islam. Um, and they're also very Sufi, very mystical, and very musical oriented. And they wander from festival, house to house, and like that.
They're made for Sama.
That's why I thought I might begin with this record.
You are brilliant as always.
All right, so here we go. Let's hope that the sound is working.
চল দেখি ভাই গৌরাঙ্গের দোলে আমরা পড়তে যাই সবাই মিলে চল দেখি ভাই গৌরাঙ্গের দোলে সে তাহাই হরি কথা ভাগবত গীতা ওরে প্রেম দাতা নিতায় বলে আমার প্রেম দাতা নিতায় বলে চল দেখি ভাই গৌরাঙ্গের দোলে আমরা পড়তে যাই সবাই মিলে চল দেখি ভাই গৌরাঙ্গের দোলে সেই স্কুলে ধরান প্রথম ভাই মনে মনে পারে রাগ সিদ্ধি হলে পরে দেয় সে তেগে দাগ হলে সাধন সিদ্ধি ভোলার হলে সাধন সিদ্ধি হবে প্রেমের বৃদ্ধি উপাধি পাবি রে খেপা বলে চল দেখি ভাই গৌরাঙ্গের দোলে আমরা পড়তে যাই সবাই মিলে চল দেখি ভাই গৌরাঙ্গের দোলে আমার গৌরাঙ্গ নির্গুণ সর্বশাস্তি তিনি ভাব প্রেম ভক্তি দৈন্য কবু নয়ন সে যে গাম্ভর্য মাধর্য ওরে আছে হৃদয় মন্দিরে আছে হৃদয় মন্দিরে চল দেখি ভাই গৌরাঙ্গের দোলে আমরা পড়তে যাই সবাই মিলে চল দেখি ভাই গৌরাঙ্গের দোলে চল দেখি ভাই গৌরাঙ্গের
That is gorgeous.
Yeah.
He's got
And
some
the
serious
same
pipes there.
in the same way, and he was a young man too at this point, or even late teens, early teens.
Hmm.
And in the same way, this music would go on for hours. They performed the festivals I've been to, exhausted me, wore me, destroyed me, because they would just sing forever and ever and ever.
They've got the spirit
Yep.
and continues.
And
Wow.
it gets in everyone when they're there, and you can just
Mhm.
see the audience slowly transforming. It's kind of amazing.
In light of what we're going through right now, we hope that we can bring that to our fellow humans here. So let's go a little deeper. So this music is being recorded in India, and it's being bought and shared within India. Um, but and of course, India is a colony of the largest empire in the world, the British Empire. So it started to bubble out a little bit. And in your research in this, did it start um, moving into like a post-colonial perspective or a post-colonial perspective where these gramophones and these records would end up in other parts of the empire?
Well, In some ways, yes, because by 1908 in India, they made there's a lot of factors feeding into this. One of the big ones was that these records were made out of shellac, which is a resin secreted by an insect. And most of the best shellac you can get is from India, in the northern parts of India. Also a little bit in Burma, Thailand, and some other places like that. But shellac has an ancient history in India. And so I think it made sense because the market grew so quickly in India from 1902. By 1908, the gramophone company, which became HMV, which became EMI, essentially they set up a repressing plant in India, also one of the first pressing plants outside of the Western world. And so much music from the rest of Asia was actually manufactured there in Calcutta, which is where the pressing plant was. So in that way, a lot of music was coming in. Then with the Indian diaspora to the rest of the world, into Malaysia, into the UK, of course, they brought the records with them. And it spread that way. And that's another great, fascinating thing about records, is how people brought them with them when they immigrated to other countries.
And the gramophones too.
And well, the gramophones actually went the other way, since that was invented in America more or less, and
Okay.
spread out. Yeah.
It's just how we all share our stuff. That's pretty awesome. Hey, let's go to a video. We have some really beautiful stuff that about this with some artists, and also about your other book, the work of Deban Bhattacharya, From Paris to Calcutta, which will go in a little bit. What is this video? Yes.
Okay.
Two
Well,
books. The band is busy. 2 books.
let's do the first one, which was I believe the title was Tabla Tarang, which is from Indian Talking Machine, and it's a great tabla solo. Tabla Tarang is actually a circle of tuned tablas, tabla being a drum. So this is a great drum improvisation, and it's a lot of images from this book that I made a film out of. So you'll get an idea of what the book's like.
Awesome. That is freaking mesmerizing. Thank
Yeah.
you. We are here with Robert Millis, sound artist and author. We're talking about a couple of books, Indian Talking Machine, which we just saw clips from, and we're going to be talking just a bit about Paris to Calcutta, Deepan Bhattacharya, and how that particular ethnomusicologist and recordist got music from parts of the world that did not get a chance to have their music heard. First question, looking at those pictures, dude, I understand crate digging. I love going into a used record store and looking for stuff. But, you have to be on some serious, like, Adderall to go deep into that and try to find something. And those are just like, I mean, that's, I don't want to say hoarding, but that's just, what do you do with that? Seriously. Like, where do you start?
Well, that's the great thing. And I mean, you can say that about Indian music in general. Like, where do you start? You can say that about music from just about anywhere in the world. So you have to start by just grabbing things and listening and finding out what you like. But the reason that I wanted to go and specifically talk to Indian record collectors is because I knew that would be a little bit of a direct line. And so I started to meet them first online, and then one would introduce me to the next in another city, and I would go from there. And they would play stuff that they thought was special or recommend a store or something like that. And
Okay.
then I just had to bring tons and tons of records home and listen. And that was, how much fun is that? Listening to records that you have no idea what they are.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, some would say that's fun. Some would say like, "Oh my God, that's
yeah.
terrifying." Hey, we're live right now, and a couple of things I want to let everybody know. If you have questions for us here, and for Rob, I want to have a shout out to Evan, Christo, love you to pieces. Wayne is also up there, and Sami, and Seji also uh, is
Seiji.
Seiji. Yeah, I'm not giving last names because we're in that kind of world right now. Um, and Livingston also. Any questions? I'll get those out to Rob. It's a fascinating subject because it really covers things we all love, music, but also in the context of like when it was first recorded, what happens to it, and even now. I want to go into Deb and I want to watch another video, but one of the things that I want to stress with you is, we're in this interesting age right now where uh, records are more popular than ever. But when you record something right now, since you're presenting streams and you're putting on playlist, I have songs, in my collection, that are 45, 50, 70 minutes long. I have like these, recordings where artists, whether it's chanting or whether it's ragas, they just go
Mhm.
on, because we're not limited to putting them out on a record. And in a context, I don't expect you to have, I know the answer to that, but thoughts about it. It's like now that we're in this particular space, do you think that the margins, shall we say, the borders of how music has been recorded now since 1902, are they going to be here, or are we the beginning of a different kind of time space when how
I hope it's the
long songs
beginning
could
of a
be?
I hope it's the beginning of a different kind of time space. I think it's I the fact that we can play things of such length. I mean, if for a while it seemed like CDs were going to be the main thing, and that they were an hour long, and now you
Hmm.
can stream all day long a single piece. And, now people have made, they've turned Beethoven's Fifth into a 24-hour piece, slowed down. And I love that. I think the possibilities are endless, and I think that's a great thing. And think about it. It was 100 years ago that this a wind-up gramophone with a 3-minute record was the height of technology, and in 100 years, that's completely turned on its head. And it took us thousands of years to get to that point. So who the hell knows what's next?
So let's go into that right now. You first played that record, the ball piece, part of this ball, on our electric turntable.
Right, 60s kind of thing. Yeah.
60 turntable. Now, you were about to hear something. We're going to hear this on a gramophone. No electricity involved at all.
Well,
Um,
except for the electricity of the microphone.
actually, yes, but the actual playing is wound up, and then you put the stylus on, and it's whatever was recorded on the shellac is what we're hearing right now. And so it's a different kind of way of listening, which you've told me before.
And
and
I'm
it's
going to try to
also,
go to camera B here for a
and we're going
little
to go to
bit. It's
camera B. So we're going ancient technology and also brand new technology all at the same time, here on Sama. But one of the things that I do want to stress is, like, the transcendent experience that the artist that's creating sacred music or healing music, um, you kind of have to get there. I remember seeing Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan at uh, at the Moore Theater here in Seattle, and he started playing, and the song was, I don't know how long, but everybody suddenly lost time,
Mhm.
and like literally, and then you're like, you were discussing this with the balls. It was like you get into this state. The state, it's not everybody's going to drop acid and like in 10 minutes they're flying. It takes a while to get into that state, and then you're in it, and the music creates a transformative experience. And I and everybody, the thousands of people that were in that show, still freaking talk about it. Like it created that kind of impact. And I'm curious because this was a time where these artists could actually share their work, and as artists, wherever they may be, they want people to hear it, and now they want people to see it. And here we are playing it on 100-year-old machine that doesn't even require electricity. Let's hear
Well,
this thing.
it really helped. I think it really helped with the artists' careers to have their names on these records and labels, and it would bring more and more people to the show. And of course, a 3-minute record is not as a static an experience as a 2-hour concert, but it kind of can be if you get into it. So, all right, we're gonna this. I haven't played this gramophone in a little while, so it might be a little rickety, but
Even better.
we're gonna see what happens. Oh, I should say actually, because I love this, or I don't love it, but the artist is Janki Bai, and this is an improvisation in Bhairavi, which is an ancient Indian raga, which is pretty much devoted to Shiva. But Janki Bai she's known as the singer with 57 cuts, because theoretically her face was scarred by a jealous lover. So that's her story, uh, and
Ouch.
she's got an amazing voice. She was also one of the very first people to record. This record is from. I'm just looking at the matrix number because I'm a nerd, and that's part of being a 78 collector. The little matrix number here in the label, and this is this was recorded in about 1906.
Wow. Okay. Awesome.
मेरा नाम जानकी बाई लाल।
Dude, that was beautiful.
Did
And it's
it?
almost like
Did this work?
you're a turntablist, and you just had to work that machine to make sure that the music was coming out, and one from or another. That was beautiful.
Yeah, that's another thing to think about in terms of 78s is that with most recording, especially for the last 50 years or more, you can always do overdubs. You can always do another take. With 78s, they gave you one or two shots, and that was it. And to hear what she does with her voice on that,
Oh,
and she had no idea what recording was. Well, you got to think about that. Who did 100 years ago have an idea of what they were doing, and that someone 100 years later was going to be listening to this?
here we are.
And one last thing, I love that you can hear her announce her voice at the end. It's something that's peculiar to Indian 78s, but it's something I love, and the way she does it at the end is great.
Thank
So,
you for sharing. That is beautiful. Let's go to another video, and then let's talk about From Paris to Calcutta. Which video are we watching now?
well, let's see. Why don't we actually do the first Paris to Calcutta video, which is the coffee grinder one. So let's try that. This is a coffee grinder. Debin, just to give a little introduction to Debin, he was Indian. He was born in Benares in India, which is Varanasi, and he, as a young man, went and lived in Europe. He was a poet and a writer, but he became very interested in early recording technology, or in early tape technology. In the 50s, he convinced somebody to give him the money to buy a reel-to-reel tape machine, and he set off in a milk truck, at a converted milk van. This is in 1953, 54, and he drove from London, where he was living at that time, to Paris, and then from Paris, he drove all the way to India and across what then eventually became the hippie trail, through Nepal, through Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, all these places you absolutely could not go today. And the whole way he recorded music, recorded all the people that he came across, and he wrote a great text about this. And that's what this book is about.
Let's see the book. Perfect.
And so there's recordings from Greece, there's recordings throughout the Middle East, Jordan, Iran, Iraq, there's recordings from Afghanistan, Pakistan, so on, all the way into India. And I just wanted to play this one because it's a great recording. It's great. He's recording Bedouin nomadic coffee makers, which he'd come across, and they're just grinding their coffee, and it's just got such a great rhythm to it.
Let's see
And
it.
we all know that coffee is very spiritual. So.
Yes, especially here in the Pacific Northwest on a rainy day. coffee grinder. I love that.
That was him at the end there with the cigarettes and his big wooden Bedouin coffee grinder. Yeah.
Must have been
And
delicious.
the actual track on the book goes for much longer. It goes for 6 or 7 minutes. All you samplers and beat searchers.
There
There
you
you
go. Go
go. That's a
deep.
good one.
Go deep. They will. They will. The book is called From Paris to Calcutta. You can find it on Sublime Frequencies. It's on Amazon and other places, right?
Yeah, should be. Yeah.
And I'm here with Robert Millis, and we're talking about that particular book. And for me personally, this is 1953. Devin Bhattacharya takes a milk truck, convinces somebody to allow him to buy or get the
Well,
money to buy a reel to reel.
here's the great thing too about that. Sorry I didn't mention. Sorry to interrupt. Debin didn't actually drive. He actually convinced a friend of his who was interested in architecture to do the driving. Debin just wanted to record.
Tom
And there's
Sawyer.
great stories about the bus breaking down like outside of Kabul, and what are you going to do? So, yeah.
But it's also, to me, it's 1953, and you said it was the beginning of the hippie trail. And I did a little bit of research on this, and it was like, and how I started this episode of Sama, I was talking about how does music get found? And when he recorded this, you know, we didn't know, in the 53, it was the Beats. And, you have people like Paul Bowles and others that were and spending time in Morocco and exposing people to music from there. Debin recorded this, people heard it, and then suddenly this particular generation discovers the beauty, the complexity, and just that sense of spirit in all of this music from all over the world. And it has one of those moments. I'm an immigrant, and I remember coming here for the first time and just seeing all these different people, all of these different cultures all coming into a place, and it blew my mind. And I could see that also happening as people discovered, like they had no idea, that it was so beautiful, so complex, and so from a musical perspective, just uh, rewarding, like utterly rewarding. And I always try to like visualize what his life must have been like at that time. Like, we all go traveling and time slows down when we're traveling. But with Debin, when he's out there, like every day must have been like a year for a mere mortal because of the what he's able to do and how he's able to capture this. And especially, in 53 was a very interesting time. There was like
Hmm.
things were just starting to
Well,
transform.
exactly. And it was post war
Hmm.
and post partition in India, which was a hugely destructive time. So, yeah.
What is it about Debin that got you that made you um, go deep into this?
Well, in a lot of ways, it grew out of the Fulbright that I went when I went to India to look at old 78s. I met a lot of great people. One of whom was a woman named Moshumi Bahomik, who runs a great website, organization, whatever you want to call it, called the Traveling Archive, and you can look that up online. And she makes recordings all over the Bengal region in Bangladesh and also in India, including music by the Bauls, but folk music, all kinds of music. Amazing stuff. Also, stories that people have. And she's kind of done this by the seat of her pants, as we would say, and assembled such a great archive. Anyway, I met her when I first got to India, and eventually, at some point, she suggested meeting. Um, she asked me if I knew who Debin Bhattacharya was because she'd been interested in some of the recordings that he'd made, and she'd been in touch with his widow, who turns out to have lived near her in Calcutta. And so we went over there and met her, and she said that Debin had this manuscript that had never been. I keep gesturing over here, and I'm not sure people can see that Debin had this manuscript that he'd wanted to get published, but had never been published. A lot of the recordings had come out in edited forms and LPs that he'd done over the years because he went on after this trip in the early 50s to have a long career in radio, making records of folk music from all over the world. But this was really the start of it for him.
Hmm. Hmm.
And there's something that really resonated with me about him just going out into the world, not even really knowing how to use his recording equipment, just because he wanted to interact with people and um, recording their music and talking about music was a great way to focus and have a great travel experience. And in a lot of ways, that's how I began becoming interested in music from other countries as well. And also how Sublime Frequencies works is the idea of being able to travel someplace and have the focus of researching music, meeting people. It might not be the greatest example of something, uh, uh, but you have a personal connection with them and their song and their way of playing, and that's something that comes through in Devon's work very much to me, and that's
Yeah,
why I was interested in it.
I found that too. The book is amazing, well written, good work.
I didn't
Um,
write anything; he wrote it. I wrote one paragraph of introduction, but
it's a
anyway.
good paragraph. But the fact that to be able to share this and to bring that out and the range of music on there, and the spirituals that are in there, and just at this window of time, is invaluable, especially now where we're limited to travel and we try to find ways to honor that. And this book and your work is a way to do that. Let's um, let's see another
Play
video.
another. Oh, let's
You want to
play
play a
another
record?
song.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's
Let's
play
do
another
another
record.
record.
Yeah, so we've only done one so far over here.
Perfect. And when you use the camera, camera B, make sure you're on StreamYard when you're
I
doing that.
should have been. Why was
Yeah.
it not working before?
Mm-mm. But it's
Well,
okay.
I'm on StreamYard, so I don't know what the hell's going on, but we'll try
There we
again.
are. Yes, we're there right
Oh,
now.
now it is now? Okay.
Yes.
Then I must have looked like an idiot waving it around over here.
You were look like an Instagrammer.
All right, here we go.
I love it.
Yeah, it's a great record.
That is a beautiful record. You know, in the age of COVID they're in right now, when everybody's a freaking DJ and they're doing live DJ streaming. I'm here with Robert Millis, who's taking DJing to a whole other level, my friends. We are going deep. We're going back,
Exactly,
way
to
back,
basement level.
beyond, and yet to the future. We are here right now. So all you other DJs out there, represent. This is old school.
So actually, interestingly enough, that was a sitar, obviously, by someone named Indranil Bhattacharya. No relation, but
There's a lot about the
commonly,
Charyas.
yeah, it's a common last name. Um, and this is a pretty unusual record. I don't think he recorded very much, if at all. But he was a student of Alauddin Khan, who is one of the absolute masters of Indian classical music of kind of any age. And just to talk a little bit about the sacred spirituality focus of your show, um, he Alauddin Khan, he didn't record very much. I do have a few records by him, but he was renowned for being one of the great teachers of Indian music, and he was certainly much more. He was Muslim. He was Islamic, and but he didn't care who he taught. And one of his most famous students was Ravi Shankar, who was Hindu. And this is a thing that comes out in a lot of Indian music. India has got very difficult problems, obviously, between Hindu and Muslim violence, sectarian violence. Just goes on and on there. But they seem to come together in music, and this is a really wonderful thing that music can do. And in fact, one of the collectors that I talked to many years ago when I first started going to India said that I asked him about this, and he said, yes, but what would a Hindu wedding be without Bismillah Khan's music? Bismillah Khan being one of the great Shehnai players, who's also Muslim he's from Varanasi. And I just love that, the fact that, we can hate each other on so many levels, but we come together at least in music somehow.
Exactly, and that's the power of music, and that's the power of just musicians working together. And you echoed something that I brought up on a particular summer. We were talking about musicians in the Middle East, and it really, Sunni or Shia, it doesn't matter. It's what you bring to the table, what you're offering. So thank you, Robert, for bringing that up, because especially in a recent history in India since the partition of 47 and the current political climate in both India and Pakistan, those memories and that ability for people to come together, especially at these hard times, is more needed than ever. So thank you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. So let us go. So we got about another 10 minutes left or so. I want to you presented one artist that we looked at a video for. Let me just switch into this other part
You
of
mean
this.
another video?
Yeah, Jai Chand. Unless you want to play a record.
No. Well, let's play Jai Chand, and then we'll come back, and maybe I'll play one more record, and that'll
Okay.
probably be enough.
Okay.
So
Tell me about Jai Chand.
Jai Chand was another musician recorded right at the end of Devin's trip once he arrived in India, and he's a street musician that he's performing with. There's a couple of pictures that you'll see in the video, and it's a street musician. He's performing with his son, and this is a beautiful song that, as far as I understand, is about the spirit leaving the body, kind of like a bird flies away when the time comes.
છોડી દો ને જૂના મારા પંખીરા તમો ઉડી જાઓ ને પાંખો વાળા વાળા या भी ચડિયા ગગન મંડળમાં તરુવરે જડિયા તારા તારા હમની આવીને ઝડપી લેશે હમને આવીને ઝડપી લેશે તારા જવારા પંખીરા તમો ઉડી જાઓ ને પાંખો વાળા છોડી દો ને જૂના મારા પંખીરા તમો ઉડી જાઓ ને પાંખો વાળા ફરું ખાધાને પાત્રે બગાડ્યા બીઠા રૂડા રખવાલા કોક દી આવીને ભેગા મરીશું કોક દી આવીને ભેગા મરીશું તુજ પર રાખીશું મારા પંખીરા તમો ઉડી જાઓ ને પાંખો વાળા છોડી દો ને જૂના મારા પંખીરા તમો ઉડી જાઓ ને પાંખો વાળા.
That is haunting. That is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Couple of quick things. First of all, I'm here with Robert Millis, sound artist and author. We've been talking about Tibet and Bhattacharya, from Paris to Calcutta, music and men on a desert road. A big shout out to Livingston in Kentucky, Gabriel in Argentina, and John's got a question. How were these songs used in their native settings? In temples, on the streets? How did that work?
Which songs do you mean? The Jai Chand song was, it's what's called a bhajan, which is a devotional sort of song that are sung in many different contexts and kind of often personalized in many ways. So many songs, yes, of course, were sung in temples, but they could have been sung at home. And this song was literally sung by someone who wanted to earn money. He was just singing on the street with his son. The son, Babu, does almost sound like it might be a daughter, but I've understood from Devon's widow that it is in fact his son.
Okay.
So,
Okay. It's
yeah,
amazing.
many different contexts for this music.
Okay. Beautiful. Let's hear a record.
Yeah. So I wanted to end with well, actually, you know what I'm going to do? Is the B camera working?
Yes.
I just wanted to show off for 1 second if this comes through.
Show off.
This is the Janki Bai record that I played earlier. The other side it's a one-sided record, so you only had 3 minutes, and they hadn't even figured out that you could put 2 songs on a record.
Wow.
And the other side is this lovely etched gramophone label with the angel, if you can see it, inscribing the grooves into the record with a giant quill.
That is amazing.
Yeah, and this was what every record from that time had on the back, or not every, but quite a few. So I wanted to end with a 78 by a woman named Kesar Bai Kerkar, who is one of the great vocalists of India. It's kind of, you can kind of say that almost all music from India is spiritually based, is sacred in a way. Even the love songs in the classical music are called tumri, and they're, in one sense, they're sexual. They're about love between a man and a woman, but really that love is about the love of God, and because they're essentially they're song settings of the stories of Krishna and his consort Radha. Anyway, so kind of all Indian music is spiritual, and this is Kesar Bai Kerkar. She's got such an amazing voice, I think. She, as many of you might know, one song of hers was chosen by Carl Sagan. I think it was the only Indian track to be sent into space on the Voyager.
We didn't know that, no.
And
Thank you.
yeah, her music, she didn't record very much. A lot of Indian artists had difficulty with recording. They had problems with the record labels. They felt that their music really only thrived in live settings. So she didn't record very much, but thank God she did record, because I think her voice is so beautiful.
Thank you.
So Here we go.
That is beautiful.
Yeah, she's great.
And I'm jaded. That's really beautiful. That is stirring. Thank you, Robert Millis, for sharing this work. And I have to echo Sammy's um, comments from Costa Rica. Thanks for checking us out, Sammy. Can we do this again? And let's do this again. This is beautiful.
Yeah, I suppose the next time we just have to play records and not talk so much, you know. But I can keep talking, so don't ask me questions. That's the big problem.
That's not a problem. This is, it's a huge subject. How are we sharing this? And music is also an amazing way for people to get to know each other. And once you love a particular music, it's hard not to love it, continue to love it.
Yeah,
And
that's the
so,
thing.
and it's also a really interesting entryway as we go into these particular times that we're in right now, as we need healing, as we need uh, look for different ways to help process the transformation that's happening in the world right now.
And
And
it's so horrible that we can't go to shows, we can't hang out at each other's house and listen to the records, which, you know.
yeah, so we could share them.
So
We have this. This is good. We could do this. Thank you. Okay, so huge shout out to STG, huge shout out to Sublime Frequencies. This will be, of course, archived on everybody's channels. We're going to um, If you like what you see, please go to Seattle Circuit Music and Art, sign up for our newsletter, and we have a whole bunch of artists coming up shortly. And then next week, we're on every Thursday from 7 o'clock on Pacific Standard Time. In the future, we'll have Carmen Rizzo, we'll have Kiran Ahluwalia. So many artists are just lining up, and come September, there's going to be a pretty interesting virtual festival of global artists that we're going to be a part of. I'll let you know more about that a bit. You can find out more information about Robert Millis on Sublime Frequencies. All the promotional that's come up to this has links to his Bandcamp and his website. Remember to support artists wherever they may be. These are really difficult times, but it's also an interesting time and opportunity for us to look at the way things we've been look differently at the way things that we've been doing and how can we make things better. Robert, thank you.
Thank you, Derek.
Keep collecting. And I want to go deeper into that process of what you went in your mind when you were looking at these gigantic piles of records and where to start, because that in and of itself is a documentary and in there. Thank you. I want to thank everybody to help put this together, and we're back next week. This is
Thank
Sama.
you, Derek. Have a good night.
Robert. Seattle Circuit Music and Art.